Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast, This Week in America. Thank you for being with us on the program today. Lorraine Angela Dopson is a writer living in Bismarck, North Dakota, previously a counselor and a grant writer. She raised funds to help renovate the stately Mandan Depot, which is now a Native American arts business. Her first publication was a journal article based on her doctoral dissertation about a Danish philosopher. The next publication, far less philosophical in nature, written in conjunction with Job Services North Dakota after the state's 1980s oil bust, entitled Dislocated Workers in the Building Trades. The article, by the way, was recognized by the State of Labor, Department of Labor, as the best work to come out of state. Her first novel, very well received with excellent reviews, The Light at the End of the World. She's the author of the nonfiction book Visions for Healers. And her latest novel, we'll be talking about first on the program today, Hard Road Home. Lorraine Dopson with us on the program. Lorraine, welcome to This Week in America. Great to have you with us on the show.
Hi, Rick. Nice to be here.
There is so much to talk about with all the books that you have written. The most recent, as I mentioned, is Hard Road Home. Let's talk about this because this is more than just a romance. We've got the cover that on the video version you're seeing on the screen. We'll talk about the cover in a second. Hard Road Home. Talk about the book and where you got the idea. This goes back to North Dakota, so I'm sure it's an area that you're familiar with.
Sure. And as perhaps many of your listeners will remember, about 5 or 6 years ago, we really began to hear about the Bakken oil boom, the Bakken being a large oil area that covers underground several states. It's a very deep pools of oil. And during the beginning of our last oil boom, there was a time when the country was still reeling from a terrible recession. There were thousands of people out of work. And so for a while there, North Dakota was kind of holding out the beacon of prosperity and job growth. And so in a very short period of time, around 2012, over 70,000 people came to our little agrarian state, which now is a big oil-producing state. But our population used to be 640,000 about 8 years ago, and now it's over 720,000, which doesn't sound like a lot for urban people, but out here, that's a significant change in the state. And so I consider that influx of 70,000 people, a large percentage men, certainly early on, as being kind of a testosterone rush for the state. You couldn't get away from the fact that we were in the middle of an oil boom. Even here in Bismarck, the capital, which is 150 miles away from the epicenter of the oil boom. So with this testosterone rush going on, I thought, this is ideal ground for writing a romance and for exploring, with the tool of romance, the relationships, the lives of the workers themselves, the day-to-day people who were out on the rigs, doing the hard work, driving the trucks, doing the tremendous labor needed to get at that oil.
And you capture all of that so well in the characters, and you talk about when suddenly North Dakota was growing, it was the place to go. I can remember reading where small towns in North Dakota suddenly were large towns in North Dakota, and how they were going to handle all of the influx from people all across the country. In the book, Hard Road Home, let's talk about some of the main characters. Amanda is interesting, and the thing that's so nice is you're reading the book, you really root for these characters. These are characters you really want to get involved with. Let's talk about Amanda. Give me some of her story.
Amanda is a young woman in her 20s. She's had some college, but not really. She's entered the workforce at a pretty young age. Her parents are average in income and not really able to help her out financially. But more important for the sake of my story, Amanda is really shy and insecure, and she's at the point where she should be getting out into the world to be the person that she's meant to be, but she holds back and she shies away from life.
We're talking about the new book, Hard Road Home. Our guest on the program is the author, L.A. Dopson. The book is available all across the country. You'll find it at Amazon, at Barnes & Noble. Information, by the way, at Lorraine's website, which is lorrainedopson.com. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. We're talking about Amanda. She meets up with Clayton, and do a little background on Clayton. He, again, is exactly what you were talking about a few minutes ago. He comes from Kansas looking for money to support his family, ends up in North Dakota. Talk about a little bit about his background and how he meets up with Amanda.
Clayton is a truck driver, and people may not realize the crucialness of truck driving to the oil industry. When you drill one oil rig, a truck will have to make about 1,000 or more trips, or numerous trucks, to really get that rig up and running. So truck driving was a job in great demand. The wages were good. Clayton is from eastern Kansas. He grew up on the family farm. It's now in financial trouble, as were a number of small farms during the recession. And he wants to get up here, make money as fast as he can, send it back home, and save the farm that way. He's got tunnel vision. He has no room for anything else but driving that truck and raising that money.
You capture really what's happening on two levels. It is a story of personal relationships, and we get that very vividly in the book, Hard Road Home. Also, you capture, what you've been talking about, what everybody went through, what the people who lived in North Dakota were going through, and people like Clayton, who comes from another state, and the hard work that went into this. Talk about the writing process of this, so able to capture the emotion as well as real world, what was happening at the time.
For me, I was in a writer's group, and the suggestion came out that to capture characters, the best way to get deeply inside of somebody and to imagine them out from that is to concentrate on detail. First, the surface detail of this person who may or may not be visual, but I actually found the Clayton model in a fast food restaurant. I saw this guy in the plaid shirt and boots, and I described him in the beginning of the book. Never saw his face, but I began just describing what I saw on the outside, and then took that description further and further into my own imaginary forays to create a character. A kind, compassionate, loving man who, through some struggles and losses, the grief of his own, is, like Amanda, reticent to be in relationships and wants to keep to himself.
Hard Road Home is the name of the new book. This is the newest from Lorraine Dopson. You'll see it as L.A. Dopson. The book is available all across the country. You'll find it online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and you can link on directly at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. One review said the characters and plot will stay with you long after you finished reading the novel. That's a real compliment, because these are long-lasting characters. It's hard when you put the book down, you close it for the final time. That's really not closing the thought process on that, is it? These are characters that really resonate well with the audience.
Well, that's what readers and reviewers have said, so I really appreciate that. I think that being a counselor for many years and having a doctorate in counseling, I've been researching the human psyche and talking to people on a pretty deep level for a long time. So that's been very helpful. Another gift that I have, I believe, is the ability to capture dialogue, and people have commented on the conversations between my characters and how they're so realistic. And so I appreciate hearing that.
Well, and that is so important, because so often you see all of this sort of extra dialogue. It's not really making any sense. What I'm reading in Hard Road Home really gives us a better understanding who these people are, in particular Amanda and Clayton, and does move the story along. How difficult is it, challenging for an author to use dialogue, but to keep the story moving and to give us a little more insight into who these characters are?
My experience was that in the writing of this book and other books that I've written, it's a very intense experience for me, and I'm thoroughly involved in those characters, and their conversations are playing in my head all of the time. I thought I should have a bumper sign that said, "I break for dialogue," because even I'll drive on the road, they'll be talking in my head, and I'll think, "Oh man, she said this." Oh, he said, "Okay, this is going to work." And so I think many writers can share this experience that you look totally normal to the outside world, but inside you are in a different reality, and you just have to keep those two together.
And I'm sure you have a keen sense of observation as you're looking at things. You look at it a little differently because here's something potential that I can use in a story. And certainly with dialogue, the way people speak, the words they use, that type of thing. Is observation a key to being a good writer?
Oh, absolutely. And observation has always been a big part of my life, not just from the counseling standpoint, but I actually got my bachelor's degree in art and am a painter. So especially when I'm working on painting, the world is very, very vivid to me. So for any writer, that sense of observation is really important.
Hard Road Home is the book we're talking about, the new novel from our guest on the program, author Lorraine Angela Dopson. Book is available all across the country, and information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Mention the other two books that you've written. I'll talk about them briefly as we got a few minutes left in the program. The Light at the End of the World. That was your first novel, described by one reviewer as rich in vision, originality, and imagery. You have an ear for convincing dialogue, making deep history come alive. And once again, we're back to being praised for the dialogue. Tell me a little bit about the book, The Light at the End of the World. And that was the first novel that you'd written, and that was very well received as well.
Okay, well, I'm going to just frame this a little bit for you. Hard Road Home is kind of a small picture book. It's the details of individuals' lives and how they fit together in quite a small frame. My other two books, such as The Light at the End of the World, are very much big picture books, and my own tendency is to see the world in big rather than small things. So I'm always thinking, if we do this, what are the implications for everybody else or the rest of the world or the universe? So like I said, my natural tendency is to describe that big picture. When I began writing The Light at the End of the World, I'd just finished several rewarding and exciting years with the renovation of the Mandan Depot in Mandan and the beginning of supporting a Native American arts store there through grant writing. And I came home and I'd always wanted to write, but I always was not that happy just being alone by myself for a long time, and a writer has to be alone by herself for a long time. And so to get to that point where I could actually write took a period of actually praying and going deep in myself, and finally I was able to write and have the writing itself be a reward, and that was very helpful. I've been a long time student of feminism and also the Sophia, the mother goddess history of all people on earth, I'm going to reach out and say. And so I'd always been studying the time of the Great Mother and prehistory, the end of the last ice age. So when I sat down to write The Light at the End of the World, I incorporated the scientific and philosophical, psychological elements that I'd been experiencing and reading about, researching over the last couple of decades. And that was the basis for my story. And I created my star, Thistle, to carry that story forward from the security of these people to a time of cataclysmic climate change and that effect on their civilization.
And you did an excellent job. The recommended by the U.S. Review of Books, one review saying a book that sheds so much light on unanswered questions. The book is the light at the end of the world. And the nonfiction book that I mentioned in the beginning, Visions from Heaven, a couple minutes left in the program. Talk about that. This is different, and this is really a moving book that you were part of.
Right. And again, this is a big picture book based on my experience interviewing a Native American man during a deep relaxation state where he was experiencing visits from the ancestors, visits from the spirit world. I and another friend recorded those interviews over an 18-month period. And one of the behind that was the fact that he had been told by the spirit world that he was to write a book about this experience before he died. And he was dying of cancer at that time. A week before he died, he received mentally the title of the book, the chapters of the book. He got a hold of me and gave me that so I would have something to work with. And then he did pass away. And so for the next 6 months, I worked with those recordings and my own notes of our interviews and put together a coherent book that people have found really helpful, especially people in crisis, people who've experienced loss and grief. And I think the older people who are concerned about, the afterlife, the spirit world, what happens to me after I die, what has happened to my loved one after he or she dies. People have appreciated it from that viewpoint, and it's something that I'm proud of, and I really cherish that experience.
Well, it's a very powerful book as well, and all three of these books are available at Lorraine's website, which is very simple, LorraineDopson.com. That's LORRAINE Dopson, DOPSON.com. Of course, you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. A couple minutes left in the program. What are you working on now?
Well, I'm working on marketing my books, especially my last book. And as anybody who's published their own books can tell you, marketing is extremely difficult. So I appreciate having opportunities to be interviewed by you and to somehow get the word out there about the books that a lot of people have already really enjoyed.
Well, thank you. And I know you're working with Strat Advertising on this. And as an author, you said it's difficult sometimes to cut through, get the word out there. Talk briefly in just a minute or so in the relationship you have and why it's important to have someone like that working with you.
Okay. I became aware of Strat Advertising after I placed a book in the New York Review of Books, where thousands of books are on display, and different people in the writing world or audiences, individuals, go and see those books and decide what they might like. And after that, I had several calls from different advertisers with suggestions of how I might market this book better and get it out to the world. So originally we were just going to do that one book, but then when they saw that I had three, what we did was first I send my books to them, and they find professional reviewers to review the books and place those reviews in the U.S. Review of Books. And of course, I'm learning all of this as I go along, which is another thing about publishing a book. You are also paving your own trail
Exactly, yes.
in the world. So they've helped me very much with getting my reviews together and getting them out there. And a project that we're working on now is that they have suggested, and I've agreed, to do a short, like a 3-minute segment, like a little movie. I don't know what the professional word for that is, but something that I can put on my website, an imaginary, they've got professional actor and actress, and probably a little bit of dialogue. I haven't seen the finished product, but just another way, a newer way that writers are using to advertise their books.
So many avenues out there that are new, and we're talking about Strat Advertising. The website is very simple, stratadvertising.com. With us on the program today, Lorraine Dopson, author of 3 books. The new one we're talking about, Hard Road Home, described as a story of courage, self-discovery, and steamy romance on the scenic route of a journey home, getting excellent reviews. Hard Road Home. Her first novel was The Light at the End of the World, and we were just talking a few minutes ago about the nonfiction work Visions from Heaven. That's available, as are all the books, at Lorraine's website, lorrainedopson.com. Go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you can link on directly. Lorraine, nice job on all 3 books. Look forward to having you back on the program. Thank you so much for being with us on the show today.
Well, thank you, Rick. It's been nice visiting with you.
It has been our pleasure. You're listening to Lorraine Dopson on This Week in America. Her information at the website, lorrainedopson.com. And of course, you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Stay tuned. We continue right after these messages.